Hello, welcome to the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast with your hosts, EFT trainer Michael Barnett and EFT supervisor Michael Preston. Together, we will be exploring the art, heart, and science of EFT. We're excited to bring you this first season of the EFT podcast Foundations, where Michael and Michael will be breaking down the fundamental elements of EFT.
All right, and welcome back to the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast. As always, we are your hosts, Michael Preston, joined by Michael Barnett. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. How are you? Good to see you.
Oh, man, we're doing good, doing well. How are you?
I am well as well. Another beautiful day here in Southern California. Happy to be here with you and continue our journey and our conversations together.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Me too. I'm looking forward to today, but I wanna pause for a second, and I want to mention something that's kind of exciting. I got an email from your lovely wife that says she is moving into a little bit more openness in her schedule and will be rejoining us, hopefully for some episodes throughout the end of this season, and then with the majority of the next season. Did I have that right?
yeah, we got her back.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah. For those of you who wouldn't know this, the initial intention was for the three of us to be doing this together. And, sometimes life has different ideas.
It sure does.
That is,
I tell
right?
you, I know all about that.
I know you do. I know you do. So, yes, she'll be joining us maybe as soon as next episode, and if not, very, very soon, and most likely for the entirety of the rest of what we do and how we do it. So it'll be really fun to have Sylvina back. I'm really
Absolutely. I am so excited. I saw the email. I was pumped to see that email from her and was looking forward to jumping in and seeing her today. So I'm looking forward to her being with us. She's so much wisdom and love for this model. She's going to bring a lot to this show. And we know that everyone listening is going to benefit massively from her being with us.
Yeah, you will really enjoy her presence. She's has a beautiful way of disseminating the model and sharing her experiences, an awesome sense of humor and an elegance about her. And I could say a lot of great things about her.
I hope you can say
things I'll probably blush it here. Yes.
That's funny. Yes. Okay. Well, that being said, let's jump in. We are finally at this spot that I know so many have been waiting for. And so today in the next few episodes, we're going to be diving into the how. Like, what does this start to look like in our sessions, and what's unfolding, and how's the EFT therapist responding, and what are they actually doing in their session? So if you've been waiting to learn about that, it is here. We're glad you're joining us. And let's get started.
And we know that you've been waiting, because everybody's always like, "Where's the proof? Tell me how to do it, right?
Tell me how. Tell me how." And we get it, right?
Yeah.
We get it, because this is such an important part of our work.
We've been there too, right? We've been there too.
Oh yeah. So today's we're covering move 1 and move 2 of the tango, right? Because we're not going to be able to give it good justice to try to do it all in one go. And so what we're going to try and talk through is a bit about the how we do move 1 and move 2, what the goals are of move 1, what the goals are of move 2, and how we transition from one to the other.
And to be very clear, this is for stage 1.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
This is the systemic part, the interactive. We're pulling the dynamic forward.
Right. So move 1, move 2 of stage 1. And so let's kind of just start off by talking a little bit about what are some of the goals of move 1 in the tango. As you start, new couples coming in, and you're thinking, okay, what's my goal? We've done our assessment already, and now we've got to start doing this tango with a lot of focus and a lot of care. And you've got a new couple in front of you. You're move 1 out the gate. What are you thinking about as far as your goals? Where are you going with them?
That's an awesome question. So one of the things I'd like to just start with is, in the back of my mind, I have that diagram with the 5 different colored circles that really designate the moves of the tango. And the first one says kind of zoom out, present process. And that's true, but it's also very vague and confusing.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, right. And it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. That's the tricky thing. Right. I could make sense of that, but it would probably be very different than how other people would make sense of that. But how we make sense of it in EFT is very unique. And what we are already holding in the back of our mind is the problem that is disconnecting couples is a self-reinforcing pattern or dynamic they've created over time. So we are automatically thinking of that. Sue used to say we are process consultants. We're looking at what it is that couples do when they trigger each other, when they tip off balance. What is it? What is the process they get into? And we have a very clear structure for that. So moving into move one, I'm holding in the back of my mind, you and I were kind of riffing about this a little earlier. I'm also holding another image in my mind, which is the image of that Burning Man sculpture of these two enormous walls, right? And sadly, these significant others are sitting back to back, but rather than being buoyant, both of their heads are in their hands, and they look so deflated. And within the wire sculpture, you see these two little children reaching through to one another, through the distress, and they're touching hands, and you can feel the longing of connection. And the only thing I would add to that I think speaks to move one and actually stage one is taking a transparency of the cycle and putting that, like overlapping, superimposing that, because what we're really doing is we're trying to elicit what we know to be this dynamic that has been co-created unintentionally, and people are often very unaware of it, over time, that creates the disconnection. It is the problem in couples therapy. It is the problem that creates disconnection. It is that thing that we are attempting to de-escalate. So starting with that, I'm thinking we're a process consultant trying to understand what the dance is. We know there's a dance. So the zoom out has that in mind. It's not just general and abstract, right? We are going to try to pull that forward. And so the idea here, if I were to say it in a very simple way, we're trying to, with that in mind, elicit cycle light. And we could use Magda Arnold's way of holding emotions. When we think about EFT, emotionally focused therapy, her framework for emotion, where there's a cue, appraisals, essentially feelings, an embodied visceral sense of our emotional experience that primes an action tendency or an attachment framework, an insecure attachment strategy will show up that triggers the partner. We want to just get the scaffolding. We're not going to do a deep dive. We're not going to do deep work, but we're going to get curious with the couple about when they trigger each other, what starts it, what the meaning of their partner's step in that dance is, perhaps a couple words, not a deep dive into the emotional experience in terms of engaging them, but a couple words about what that feels like when that narrative is running and what they do, right? And so it's a light scaffolding that we are going to work from moving forward. And we're going to try to do that with both people. So all things being equal, that very first session post-assessment, we will do move one more elaborately, really trying to get into a conversation about that. Yeah?
Yep.
So I start with,
Okay. Yeah. So I think if I can put it into some other words, some of the words that I've been around to hear is kind of really naming the within and between, right? So there's a massive focus of the between, of what's happening between the two of you. It's not a deep dive into what's happening within and pulling out any of those things. It's really finding the pieces along the way, like what really tips you off balance, like what happens between the two of you. And it's going to note that it'll be different for both of them. One person might be tipped by, some sigh somebody makes, and one person might feel the tip come when someone's, in the room and they're getting louder and louder. And there's different on-ramps to this deal. But I say to the way that I try to think about it is getting stuck on 285 around Atlanta. There's lots of ways to get on 285, but if you're driving too fast, it's going to be pretty difficult to get off 285, right? And so we're looking for the on-ramp. We're saying what happens that gets you stuck in this loop. And we start listening. And we begin to put the pieces together, and we want to hold it in a way that begins to help them see that there's this thing that happens from this side, and then it sneaks over to that side. And then when they respond to it, it reinforces their partner to take their next step in the dance.
Exactly. So even as we are talking with, let's say, the first partner that jumps in and begins talking about when my partner rolls their eyes, right? That's the thing. Anytime we talk about something meaningful, my partner rolls their eyes. And to you or me, rolling the eyes might not be a big deal, but it grabs this person. And it's never lost on us that the person rolling their eyes is their significant other. It's a person they've given their heart to. So now the stakes are much higher. And even in me saying it that way, I would use language like that because we're immediately pulling in the attachment frame. This is part of how we actively use the notion of what is it that hurts about that moment. So when the person that you really care about here and love or taken vows with or walking the path of life with rolls their eyes, tell me what that says to you. And they may give us a couple lines, and we have the first appraisals. And over time, especially when we get to move 2, we're going to expand those appraisals so people have we get a full picture of the narrative that lives on the inside. We'll cobble it together. And we might just reflect a couple of those appraisals. You know, it tells me that he thinks I'm totally foolish, and it tells me that whatever notions I'm going to bring forward are going to get battered away. And I might just reflect that must be very painful in a moment like that, to bring something up and feel like anything you bring to this person you love is going to get battered away. What is that like to walk in your shoes in that moment? Well, it really hurts my feelings. You know, of course it hurts my feelings. I feel rejected. So, wow. So in that moment, when you get an eye roll, feel very put down, and you feel rejected and hurt. And I say, how do you interact with your partner in that moment? That's a lot to hold. And they'll say, well, I get pissed. I get pissed, man. I'm going to throw a grenade over there because that doesn't feel respectful. Yeah. And so now there's the beginning. I'm really kind of shrinking this, but giving a picture of it. And what I could do from there is ultimately, as I kind of organize that a little bit better, I can go to the partner and say, by the time your partner kind of throws a grenade your way, I know that must really sting. And so help me understand when your partner gets angry that way, what it says to you. And through that process, we'll map out both sides of people's experience, just to even begin implying that one person's step in the dance is the thing that opens the door to the other person's step in the dance. And we have a self-reinforcing system that we're starting to draw forward and elicit forward. So even in move 1, we're starting to have more than just an implicit sense, but we're bringing that into the focus of the therapy.
Yeah. So I want to follow a little bit what you were saying here. Because we were talking about finding the tipping point in their relationship, and someone is going to open up about that. Sometimes they'll look at each other and say, do you want to start? Do you want to start? They'll do that song and dance. But for the most part, someone will say, it's when this happens. And then I like the question you asked, which is, tell me what that says to you, which is where you start getting some appraisals. And that's part of that, getting the pieces to the tango. And so if you want to take appraisals, and you might say, this is the meaning they make of that move.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And so we collect the meaning they make, which is often it's a dangerous cue. It's a thing that says, my partner's not going to take me seriously, or it doesn't matter what I do. I hear this one, I was talking to a couple recently, and they said, he goes, I got in trouble because I woke her up before I left to work. And she goes, well, I was having a good sleep. And I said, okay. And then he goes, but it doesn't matter. If I don't wake you up, and this is what he said, if I don't wake you up, I'm an asshole. What am I supposed to do? Right. So it was either way.
I'm an asshole. I'm an asshole in the eyes of the person that I depend on and the person that I love. So the stakes are much, much higher from the get-go, right?
That's right. And so that's the appraisal, the meaning that they make, right?
That's right.
And so for that guy, he was able to say, it doesn't matter what I do. And again, we're adding that frame. It doesn't matter what you do in the eyes of someone that you love more than anyone else in the world. Like the person that matters, like you, there's no good move for you here. And we're helping people begin to see that and begin to name the place that hits when they start to feel that way in this relationship and how they respond to that. And so we've got we're asking about, oftentimes we're going to get the primary emotion at least stated. We're going to know and see the reactive emotion, right? That one's going to be hopefully very obvious. And we'll get the meaning that they begin to make. And I like the way that you were saying, we take the response they have and we kind of just drag it over to the other side, right? And say, when your partner starts doing this, that's a tricky moment for you. And we follow the same process on the other side.
That's right. So we're already in a very, very light and general way. We're not here to do deep work. We're just here to kind of lay out the map or the scaffolding of what is contained within the dynamic, that co-created dynamic. And again, we're always listening through the attachment frame. What is it that hurts relationally about this? Why is that such a like a cut to the quick moment for people? And of course, we never lose sight of the fact that this is happening at the hands of their significant other. So we're really kind of beginning to paint like the first layer of a picture. and we want to start getting curious. And one of the things that's really important from the very get-go is the way that we show up with our alliance and our empathy, because we are asking questions and then we will reflect them, and we're making sure that the client feels heard and that we also understand. And that's very different than what happens in the cycle. So even from that very first place where we're just kind of delineating, here's kind of the basic working map or scaffolding, there's a lot happening already. But we
Yeah.
have this, we again have this frame. There's a systemic frame we're bringing in the general, we're reflecting present process as it pertains to this dynamic, right?
Yep, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
So we're tracking this bit here, right? We're trying to understand what's happening between them, following this cycle that takes over. And I like that you were saying we're really helping them hold this co-created piece, because the cycle doesn't ever, when it's active and running, it never lets the couple see it as co-created. So for me, and so I'm curious for you, for me, I always try to get to a place in my session where I'm able to follow a narrative from what tips him off balance, where that hits reactively, what the meaning they make there is, where that begins to hit in the more primary place, and then what happens to them that then directs their person to go. I'm trying to get to a place where I can say, what we're saying here is the more you do this, the more you do this, and the more you do that, the more you have to do this.
Exactly.
I'm really excited to share with you all an opportunity starting in February. If you are newer to EFT, maybe you've just finished your core skills, or you've been here a long time and you find yourself not knowing your way around the tango, and in session you can't remember where you are on that map, I want to invite you to join a small group deliberate practice for the EFT Tango. This is a 10 meeting supervision focused on each move of the tango. In this group, we will discuss the moves of the tango, and then we'll watch a live session example of that move in the tango. Then we'll have time for role play, and I'll join each group to provide feedback for your role plays, and I'll be there every step of the way to help guide you into a deeper understanding of the tango and a more confident way of working through it. I hope you will consider joining. Visit www.michaelprestonlpc.com/tango for more information.
So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your process there. Like, how do you start to finish that move one and prepare for your move two?
Well, I could talk about that in two ways. Sometimes the entire session is just kind of really pulling that forward, and it depends upon people's kind of own psychological awareness. Depends upon the level of reactivity. It depends upon some of the things that brought people in. But if we can get through a move one, relatively quickly and succinctly, if I have the opportunity to do what you did, which I really like, it's because that way of consolidating the way everything links up and becomes self-reinforcing is really powerful. And it gives people, it's like planting the seed. Like, this is a self-reinforcing entity, if you will.
That's right.
That doesn't, it's like chicken or egg. Not one person starts it all the time. So you don't have to start with our oral pursuer. We're just trying to bring forward the entity, like the circle that is a cycle. It doesn't have beginning or end. So I say that only because if I could elegantly synthesize it the way you did, that was really beautiful. I would do that if the entire session took the time to actually kind of sculpt out the move one. But let's say 20 minutes in, people have really shared a really nice scaffolding, and I'm aware somebody's more emotional in the moment. I feel a more emotional presence. I feel like I have more access to their inner world, and I will make that choice, whether it's a withdrawer or a pursuer. I will move toward that person, and I will want to begin my move two at that point.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
That's how I would determine that.
Okay, so that's really important, because you named another piece that we want to be very clear about. In stage one on the tango, it is pursuer or withdrawer. We want you to really hear that clearly. In stage one, it's who has access today.
That's right. There isn't a preordained sequence to that, and sometimes I think people get a little confused because there is one for stage 2, but these are 2 different processes. Here we have this system, and we're just getting clear about, what activates it for each person. And once it's activated, the sad piece about it, and I will often say this at the end of move 1, if it's been a whole session, we've mapped out the whole thing. It's implied how it's self-reinforcing. Sometimes we're more explicit about that, but also talk about the tragedy of when they're each feeling that kind of pain, because this dynamic that they seem to be creating, neither one of them can find their way to the other in times of distress. They're alone with their pain, and it has a very predictable outcome. Right? Like no one walks out unscathed. It's not sunshine and roses for one person while the other person is down in a dungeon. It doesn't work that way. Both people are hurting and they're feeling disconnected and sometimes demoralized. So we're beginning to kind of point toward, this is a really important thing for you all to take on together, because once it starts, you're both suffering and this relationship is suffering. It's in despair.
Yeah.
So if we have time, we want to kind of move toward the most emotionally resonant, emotionally present person, because I feel like the doorway is at least cracked open a little bit, if not a lot. Sometimes people get pretty choked up, and I will follow that thread, right? And now we can, as we like to say, put a stake in the ground. We're going to choose one and move into move 2 of the tango, right?
That's right. And this is like, we choose a side, we start doing the work, and we move into move 2. I want to say, before we jump into move 2, you mentioned something that was important about, like, we don't always do a long move 1 throughout the course of stage 1.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I thank you, because I forgot to mention that, and I think it's important. We have had conversations amongst other very, very seasoned EFTers, and I remember on multiple occasions the focus of the conversation, like, what is really stage 1? It's very confusing. I mean, not stage 1, move 1. It's very confusing. And talking about it this way, I hope gives people a really nice framework for what move 1 is. But also, as we move down the road in the therapy, we don't have to do elaborate stage 1 like this every time. So let's say I'm 8 sessions in now, and I've been doing tangos each session with partners. I might start a session like, hey, help bring me up to speed right now about where you're seeing things between you. And we start a conversation, or I might have had a session where I spent almost exclusively time in moves 2, 3, 4, and 5 with one partner. Did a tango, but it took the whole session. So I know the next session I want to move to the other partner, right? And this is all stage 1 work. So I want to move to the other partner. But I won't go into, let's delineate the entire scaffolding of your cycle again. Where I will do that is if we have couples who have kind of tipped into a big fight, there's a lot of conflict, or especially in the beginning of therapy, if we have people coming in and it's like kind of conflict du jour, and they both really want to talk about it and want us to hear their experience, then I want to map the whole thing out. But it's much harder to kind of do the deeper work that comes about in stage 2. So as we move through a course of therapy, we don't need to do the more elaborate move 1 like we do right after the assessment when we're beginning with a couple.
Thanks for naming that.
Thank you for naming that.
That's huge.
Actually. Yeah.
Well, cool. So we've got a nice mapped out move 1.
Yeah.
So when you throw a stake down, you've decided this is where we're heading. And if you could say something about what are some of the micro goals now? Like, you're shifting your session, what's your heading on? What are you trying to elicit and pull forward now?
So a colleague of mine in Boca many years ago said, I get what we're doing now. We're decriminalizing the action tendency.
Oh, I love that.
And
I love it.
I do too. It's just such powerful shorthand. So in other words, when significant others are in conflict, the vast majority of the time people see trigger reaction, trigger reaction, trigger reaction. And they're so distressed that no one really unpacks that moment and what the personal and relational meaning is, why that hurts so much in that moment. Right. So this is where, as an EFT therapist, we're going to roll our sleeves up and get in the trenches with people. And we are trying to understand from an attachment perspective why they would make this move, why they do this thing that some part of them, certainly if they don't know already, they will know in the course of therapy, knows it's not going to go very well in terms of getting what they want with their partner. It's going to pretty predictably create negativity and disconnection. And so there has to be a deeper meaning to this moment. And so the micro goal of move 2 is to look at how emotion organizes people's reactions, their action tendencies, or if we say that differently through an attachment lens, their insecure attachment strategies. What is happening under the hood that someone would do this thing over and over and over that predictably creates the disconnection, the opposite of what they want, and brings about the very thing they fear with their partner? What is that really about? And what I would say from a very high level is usually a lot of this stuff that we're moving toward lies outside of people's awareness. If people are aware of it, they often don't feel very safe in sharing and leaning in with a partner. The cycle has been so impactful that it doesn't feel emotionally safe. So sometimes people say it, but they say things like, "You're never there for me," and they weaponize it rather than, "I feel really alone when I can't find you," right? And so we want to move into our understanding about what drives that trigger moment. And we know there's a really vulnerable human being in there that has a longing to be connected with their partner. So we are listening for the ear with what hurts. And we put our stake in the ground and we start with looking at when you are on the receiving end of your partner's step in the dance. Help me understand your experience. I want to know your inner world in that moment. And we come alongside people and we are going to co-burden and co-regulate and join them in that discovery process. Again, always listening for the ear with what hurts, relationally speaking, right? The pain is contextual. It's in the context of the thing happening with their significant other, which is different than individual therapy, where this thing is just hurting and we're going for that hurt, right?
So I'm thinking about what you're saying and the questions you might ask, and I'm thinking to myself, Michael, didn't I just do that in move 1? Didn't I just ask them all those things? And we talked about that thing. We've got the meaning they make. We've got the distressing emotion that comes up. Why would this moment be any different than what I just did in move 1?
Great question. I love that question. That's awesome. Well, here we are going to start doing the deep dive. I don't want to just know the headlines, but when that person says, when he rolls his eyes and I feel belittled, that's the place that's really getting to me. And I might come alongside them. And so that's the painful place. As soon as his eyes are rolling, you're saying you feel belittled in the eyes of your partner. Can you tell me more about what that's like to walk in your shoes in that awful, right? And now, rather than trying to go horizontal and get much more detail and information, I want to go vertically down into that moment. I want to mine that moment and come alongside people. And the notion sometimes of co-regulating and co-burdening, again, goes back to attachment, that when we can lean into people when we feel vulnerable and distressed and we know they're in the game with us, it's much safer to feel the heavy feelings. But if we're alone, they can overwhelm us. So in the empathy and the connection of the alliance that we're building, we're starting to create a safe space to explore this with people and have that narrative, that really painful narrative, which is comprised of multiple appraisals, right? A collection of appraisals. It's like having a tapestry on all the pieces together. Comprise this narrative that's always running on the inside when a person feels dinged by their partner step in the dance. People tell these very painful stories that their step in the dance completely eclipses, right? The step in the dance does not tell the story. So this is very different than move 1, because move 1 is just about headlines. I'm getting a very general, like I say, light scaffolding of what happens. Here, I'm doing the deep dive with people. I really do want to help understand from the moment it starts with your partner's action tendency to what the narrative that gets elicited, and I want to help expand that narrative. And we know those stories are painful stories. So the more that we come alongside people with validation and powerful reflections, and they can feel our care, we're holding it with them, safer for them to feel, and up come the feelings, right? And so we want to bring forward and see how, when those feelings, those emotions are embodied, how and why it drives that particular step in the dance. There's a lot of meaning to that. So now it's organized from where it starts to where it ends, and we've filled in a very emotional way what happens in between.
So as you're saying this, it's kind of hitting me in a particular way. You're saying move 1 is kind of the index, right, of a book. Here are the chapters, here are the headlines. And move 2, I start reading the chapter and getting into what's happening. So the chapter headline might say, my partner doesn't care about me. And then we're getting into, well, can you help me understand what that's like to be you when everything in your world is saying my partner doesn't care about me? and let me know what's in that chapter. I think that's a really helpful way for even me now to think about framing move one. I've got all the chapter headlines I need, but now I have to know what it's like to read that chapter. What's in it? Because I don't know what's in the chapter until I go and read it.
And we're helping people learn that themselves. They don't know. They
Right.
don't know.
They don't know. They don't know.
Right.
Right. Because
So
it's always trigger response.
Yeah, we're helping them write the chapter. Go inside and
that's
find
so
the words
good.
for that chapter, right? What's the texture? What are the nuances? What's really happening in that moment? And we start to hear these very painful stories, right?
Yeah.
And particularly, let's say somebody, when people show up with the most general ways of either shutting down and shutting their partner out, or ramping up and getting really pissed off at their partner. When you're on the receiving end of either one of those, the thing you don't get is, this is so painful when the person I love is doing X. Because that person they love is on the receiving end of either ramping up or shutting down. And that's the last thing they're going to experience, right?
Yeah.
That's the last thing. So we're beginning to open that narrative up and help people start writing that chapter. I really like that. And we're going to come alongside them so they can find the words and they can find the texture and they can get clear what's really written in that narrative, right? We're bringing it forward and we're eliciting that very deliberately.
I like that.
And so that's the organizing part. And the other piece we're doing, we often bandy around a term, or engaging people with emotion. In other words, these narratives are very painful stories. And sometimes people can say the most profound things, but they don't feel their words. And I know you've heard me tell this story about this dude who was in a heterosexual cishet relationship, prototypical withdraw pursue cycle. And they were both at pretty extreme sides of the pendulum on that one. So she could rage. He was like showing up like a piece of cardboard. And
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he says, if she had a menu, I think I'd be the last thing that she would possibly order. And then he started prattling on like he was telling me the Atlanta Braves box scored. So I rolled my chair in and I said, could we slow down for a second? I think you said something so important here. And I said, did you just say if she had a menu, you would be the very last thing she would order? And then I kicked my chair back. So I just reflected that. And for a time, you start seeing his chin rattle and tears start coming down his cheeks.
Wow.
So he said this powerful thing, but he wasn't engaged with it. He wasn't feeling his narrative. And so what we're really wanting to do is help people feel the experience, because I remember Sue saying there is nothing like people really feeling and being engaged in emotion to express things like desire, like compassion, like empathy, like care. Words in and of themselves can't do it, but when people are viscerally feeling, right, it's that picture that speaks 1,000 words. We have a limbic to limbic moment, and I know we'll talk about move 3 next time, but it's very relevant for move 3. But we're helping people tell the story, but not just from their heads. It's not a cognitive experience, from their hearts as well. We want both. We want a clear narrative, and we want people to be able to feel the words, feel that narrative in real time.
I love that.
Because now it's a story of love. Right. And that's what we're bringing online. It's a story of love and longing, not a story of, people just poking each other.
Yeah. No, I think it's really helpful that you're naming ways that we can do that. Like you were saying, in this moment, they're going to say really painful things. They might say really painful things in move 1, but in move 2, we are going to roll in. If you have a rolling chair, or because I'm on Zoom, I literally might move my body in towards my camera. And I will say, hey, can I slow us down there? What you just said was so important. And I'm wondering if I can come back to it. And I'll rename. I'll just literally use exactly what they said. And I will also, especially with withdrawers, move my body away, because now I want to give them space to kind of step forward a bit more and into that spot. Yeah. And it's so important, that's such a distinction, I think, between move 1 and move 2. In move 1, I'm not ready for that. But in move 2, I'm really trying to elicit that to come forward.
I love your example, because in you sharing that example, something comes up for somebody and you say, let's slow down. I want to understand that better. And you're coming alongside them to literally hold that space with them. I mean, that is using your alliance based on what we know about attachment. I'm going to be here with you and make this safe for you not to have to feel this alone. We're going to unisolate this moment that you've probably held alone throughout this entire dance. And in the safety we're creating together in our relationship, you can feel. And now we see the potency of what's happening under that moment, where either you rage or you shut down and check out. So now that that's up and running, I know we'll talk about move 3 next time, but we can set the stage for people sharing that with their partners. And, through
That's right.
all of this, what's coming to mind here is we talk about reflections, and we're reflecting people's emotional
Yeah.
experience. We're reflecting their attachment words and their attachment experience. The attitude or the stance that we bring is doing so with a sense of attunement and empathy to them is key. That's what brings it alive, because we're, again, listening with the ear for what hurts relationally. Why would this
Yeah.
hurt in the context of your relationship? Like, I know, for example, one of the things that really puzzles people sometimes is, let's say people come in and the issue is financial. And let's say
Yeah.
one partner spends and the other person saves, and they're clashing about that. And I remember having a couple that came in with that, and I was scratching my head, but I remembered it was a cis het couple again. And the husband's previous marriage, he grew up very poor, and he did very well for himself. He worked.
Yeah.
And she started siphoning money out of their shared accounts into her own accounts.
Wow.
Yeah, and he started to get wind of things that was really weird. They get into couples therapy. Not only does he find out that that's happening, but that she's pregnant with somebody else's kid. And so I meet him at a time where it's almost like premarital counseling with his potential wife. They did get married, but they had an agreement. And the agreement that they thought they talked thoroughly through, like so thoroughly, like detailed, nuanced, granular, about how they would manage their money, she started spending more money than that. And it triggered him. And the thing that triggered him is he said, I thought we were on the same page.
Yeah.
That's all about attachment. This is no longer
That's right.
about dollars and cents. And I need to know you're on the same page with me. And her experience was having super controlling, alcoholic, crazy, chaotic parents who were intrusive. And she also was, they both had kind of C-level jobs. And she was like, I'm making my own money here, and you're telling me what I can and can't do with it. I need to know
Right.
I have some autonomy in a relationship with someone I love. I can't have it always commandeered by somebody. And especially the gender issues related in that were really significant. So this was no longer about money. It was, well, can I be with
Right.
somebody who can see my experience and we can feel in it together? So when I
Yeah.
say listen for the ear with what hurts, the attachment frame brings our reflections alive, our validations alive. And even as we get to that point where we have things very organized and people are starting to engage, that lovely moment where we ask an evocative question, what's happening on the inside? Because now that turns people's awareness into the inside and they're really feeling their words. So we go back
Yeah.
to the micro goals, right? And we trust that people's steps in the cycle are driven by something much deeper. And they're driven by attachment processes that are just organized by emotion. So we use emotion as our doorways in. There's a cue. What stems out of the cue? Oh, these appraisals. These are the meanings of this moment. Let's get the narrative. Oh my gosh, you're telling this tragic story of your pain. And now we're helping people actually feel that pain in the moment, and we'll help them connect that with when I feel this is what primes my step in the dance, which then becomes their partner's trigger, if you will, or cue.
Right.
And now we're starting to carve together or cobble together the entire system, right?
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that, because you're really helping me and all the listeners think about where we're going and what we're pulling forward, and how how do we find the pain, right?
Yeah.
And it's always located in the attachment stories that they hold and the attachment stance playing out in front of them. And I also want to name, in this move, I think one of the most difficult parts for newer EFT therapists coming in is the amount of repetition it takes, because you kept saying, they really tell these beautiful and painful stories start unfolding. And I'm like, but not like magic. They don't just offer this stuff freely. There's a lot of what, like your example of the menu guy who then just keeps carrying on with something about nothing, right? And it takes your willingness to step in and repeat what was just said, and or just as the stories begin to unfold and there's a lot that they've just said, we stop in this move and we say, let me just slow us down here, because you were talking about this moment when, and I'll always grab the action tendency, the cue that we've been discussing, to help anchor them back into what we're doing. That there's this moment, and what you're helping me understand is when you see your partner or hear your partner do X, and then I start folding in the pieces that they've just layered on for me. And I try to leave out the pieces about the Braves and wherever they just went. Like, I'm like, okay, that part wasn't the thing I need to reflect, but I do need to help walk them back through this story to keep moving and organizing it. And this is a lot of repetition in this particular move. And I think some things I hear well, we already said that. We already talked about that. It's like, yep, we did. And we talk about it again. And we say it maybe a little bit slower. And we add this next piece. And then I'll say something like, and now you're helping me understand that the deep place it begins to hit you is in the place of pain and this place of fear. You see your partner roll your eyes at you and your whole world starts to fall apart. So we keep adding each little layer of the onion. I kind of review the onion a little bit as we go along in repetition to keep helping them organize the experience that they're having so that they can kind of like see the whole thing together, right?
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of repetition to hold people in the key moment, and there's a lot of repetition in session, and there's a lot of repetition across session, because we're essentially helping people expand their narratives. And many of our clients don't really have a real clear sense of kind of emotional fluency or a real clear sense of their inner template for a lot of good reasons.
Right.
And so the process can move very slowly. And each time we go through a repetition, though, we're repeating the thing that's really at the heart or the core of people's distress. And at the very least, I think they feel very heard by us. People seem to feel very heard because we keep targeting this thing they have not been able to talk to their partner about, right? For a lot of different reasons. And so there is repetition within the session. And I feel like we're holding people in the key moment because we're always examining what is the key moment that you tip off balance. You could take this dynamic and superimpose it across conflict topic after conflict topic after conflict topic. But the core, because what we're really talking about is something that's hitting the core of people's attachment experience. When somehow that invisible line that keeps us connected, and you are my lifeline, you're my sanctuary, you're my important person, you're my go-to and safe haven. When that line feels like it's in jeopardy or distress, my alarm's going off and I have the same core experience. So all roads keep leading to the same core experience for each person. Those are two different experiences. And so within the context of their relationship, when they're in distress, all of that is bubbling up for both of them. And the system, the relationship is kind of tipping off balance. So there is a lot of repetition. And we're holding people in that space, and they often keep adding to it, right? They add to it. The description of the narrative grows. Their ability to go into the emotional experience and tolerate more and more of it. And so I would say, I think move 2 is the move. It's where part of the work of EFT happens, right? And these narratives I find to be like, I try to really, really get curious and into the narrative with people, because I feel sometimes when we're in it, I don't even have to say, what are you feeling in this moment? Because when we're in it, it's coming forward because they feel our empathy, right? There's like a validating presence and a holding presence, and people feel safe to actually feel that. So sometimes embodied emotion just starts to pour forth. So these narratives and how we work with them are so important. And again, that the terms and the micro terms would be organizing and engaging emotion, right? We're bringing that internal story alive, not just cognitively, but cognitively and emotionally. I want to feel it head and heart, right?
Love it. So that's going to bring us to the end of this episode.
Awesome.
So I want to make sure that we wrap up a little bit here, because what I want to name is that we've talked a little bit about move 1, where I love this idea of we're gaining the headlines. And we're not learning about the article. I really like the way you said in move 2, we start helping people write the article, because they haven't had, we're helping them put language to the place that they haven't been able to, because when the cycle moves so fast, they can't. And so we really help them write that. And as we lean in and we hold the painful place, people engage their emotion. It really moves forward. And then we're having a limbic moment in our session. And that's really what we're looking to create in move 2, is this space for the limbic system to come online and come forward. And then we move into move 3 with it. And so we'll talk more about that in our next episode. Yeah?
Yeah, great.
Wonderful. This was a lovely conversation. I really enjoyed it because it even gave me new ways to think and talk about this stuff. So I appreciate that a lot.
Me too.
And I look forward to
writing the chapter.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love it. It's helping. It's good. So, all right. So until next time, take good care, my friend. It's always good to be with you.
Well, yeah, it was great to be with you as well. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast. We hope this podcast is an encouragement for your EFT journey, bringing clarity and understanding of EFT to your work. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. To learn more about training with Michael Barnett, go to www.michaelbarnettlpc.com. To connect with Michael Preston as a supervisor, go to www.preston.com. www.michaelprestonlpc.com. Tune in again next time to hear more of this great conversation.